All right, so we're continuing on with my personal build here, which is dusty. It's already been sitting out here long enough. But as I showed you in the last video, we clearly went with we got a blue and purple sort of a theme that's gonna happen with all the lighting, which is why we called it Nebula. And actually, I don't know if I've publicly said that on the video. I know I said it on Twitter, but we're calling it Nebula, both after the MCU character, you know, Thanos' half biological, half mechanical daughter, as well as just because the lighting looks like a nebula you'd see in space.
Wait, sorry, does that mean you're Thanos?
As you can see here, we've got a bit of a bling bling theme going on. And a lot of you were kind of like, Jay, what are you gonna do for the tubes? Glass tubes, glass tubes. Nope, I've got something better. The Koss GMR 54X gaming headset is now available at drop. The lightweight design and custom fitting sling headband ensure comfortable prolonged use for those long gaming sessions, while the drivers deliver surprisingly clean sound, making your favorite games sound awesome. The closed back design with its great sound isolation means you won't disturb your neighbors, while the excellent value means you won't disturb your wallet. To learn more, click the link to the drop below. How about chrome plated brass tubes? That's how you bring the bring to your build. The bring. So anyway, what we're looking at right here is actually AlphaCool's hard tube, because the naming is so original. We're not doing the full loop today. We're gonna probably we'll hook together the graphics cards just so you can kind of see what it looks like in there. But what I wanna do is I wanna test some of their new fittings, because the problem with brass tubing, wow, okay, hold on. Each one of these boxes is one. I like the way Bits Power does it. They're just in little Ziploc baggies that you can just tear open, not deal with all this wasted cardboard. So these are 13 millimeter outer diameter. I like 13 millimeter tube over 14, especially when it comes to metal, because the actual diameter of the inside doesn't really make a difference to, and this looks ugly like this because I've already cut and sanded. I've already done some testing. This is what it actually looks like when they ship it. It's a nice smooth tapered edge that has nickel plating that goes into the inside a little bit. But as you can see, once you cut it, it is definitely brass tubing. But Jay, don't mix your metals. Brass is fine. That's why just about every fitting is brass when it comes to home construction and stuff. And then you have copper piping and all that sort of stuff. Brass is fine. This is 13 millimeter by 10 millimeter, which is the same size PETG, like the PETG stuff that I like to use. There's not a lot of fitting options at 14 millimeter. And not only that, AlphaCool makes 13 millimeter clamping compression fittings. And I say clamping because it's slippery, it's really smooth. And so the problem is, at least the way that AlphaCool was explaining it to me, is their compressions are designed specifically for this kind of tube. And I said, well, I'll probably just use the PrimoChill 13 millimeter because they've got this really thick O-ring, which has always clamped down really good on like PETG and stuff. And they were like, well, we're gonna send you our fittings anyway. Try them out, tell us what you think, because you'll find that the O-ring itself is probably not gonna be enough. And as the heat goes up and the pressure does build, because it does build pressure inside the system. Anything that's sealed and has a temperature change from hot to cold or cold to hot has an increase of pressure and a decrease in pressure. It's not on camera, but I actually was demonstrating to Nick once when he was working for me what happens if you hold a heat gun on a radiator with the pump going and no fans. It popped the tube right off the pump and sent like a 10-foot wall of water going straight up for a few seconds. And he was doing he didn't know what to do. He was like, I'm gonna get a towel, I don't know. AlphaCool has been shocking the ever-living crap out of me for the last year or so. One of the first companies I ever worked with, in fact, the first water cooling company I ever worked with was AlphaCool. The problem was they were very notorious for things coming scratched and dented. And I got to the point where I actually told them, guys, I can't work with you anymore because I can't keep promoting a product that scratches and dents and stuff. They promised years ago, about 5 years, almost 6 years ago, that they're changing their manufacturing, they're redoing everything, and that they'll win me back. Well, they have. What's funny is other brands that have been known as being the industry leader have fallen off in quality over the years. And that's what happens when you become complacent. You stagnate and everyone else catches up and passes you, which is what we're all hoping happens to NVIDIA. But I digress again. So here are the fittings. Here's a PrimoChill 13 by 10. Here's the AlphaCool 13 by 10. Right off the bat, one of the things that I really like here is if you look inside the AlphaCool fitting, it's a hex head. So if this gets stuck, you don't have to take pliers to the outside of the threads to turn it. You can just grab a hex head Allen key and tighten it and loosen it. As you can see here, the PrimoChill is just made up of the main fitting. It's got the part that the tubing actually goes in, got one clamping O-ring, one collar. If you look at the AlphaCool stuff, you've got an inner O-ring in there. Notice that inside the Primo Chill, there is no inner O-ring. So the inner O-ring is responsible for sealing it. You've got this collar, which as you can see is tapered. And you see how it's also split? So what this does is as you tighten down the collar, this squishes together and pushes against the actual metal. You then have this plastic washer. You then have another O-ring responsible for the compression or the friction of pulling the tube out. And then you've got the collar, which locks that all down. I'm gonna grab 2 tubes, and then we are going to kind of do a little bit of a test here to see which holds better. One thing I will be doing though when I do my build is I will be lightly sanding the end for a little bit extra friction. You can't see it, so it doesn't matter. So this would be collar, which problem number 1, doesn't fit, even though this is advertised as a 13 mil. So let me try another one. These are older collars, and they did change them later on. See? So that's one thing you've got to think about when it comes to Primo Chill. Both of these are advertised as 10 by 13, but because that has a plating, and the tolerance is so tight, the black fits, where this does not. Now I'm gonna test it with another pipe just to see if maybe there's a difference in variance in the pipe. Nope, doesn't fit 2 of them. I just wanna make sure Primo Chill couldn't come back and say, well, their tube is too big. But as you can see, these are both the same size and there's a difference between the 2 of them. So chrome is already out. I couldn't use them if I wanted, but now we're gonna test it with black. So you'll go collar, O-ring, fitting. So that's on there as good as it'll go. Okay, that's pretty good. I don't think I'd have to worry about that popping off. So I mean, I even said to AlphaCool that the Primo Chill has great clamping force. That's why I've always used it. I mean, look at that. It's moving the whole tray. But let's go ahead and compare it now to the AlphaCool stuff. We've got collar, brass, taper goes towards the cap. Then it goes plastic washer. Then it goes O-ring, which again is really thick, just like the Primo Chill one. So then we'll twist that as we go in, because remember there is an O-ring. That's already, look at that. It's not even clamped down. Okay. So what I'm gonna test right now is I'm gonna sand the end and see how much better that clamping force is. All we're trying to do is rough up the surface, because this is the opposite of what you were watching us do when we painted this thing, is we want, oh yeah, that's already grabby. And the reason why I'm going like this instead of that is I'm trying to make these spirals in there to give it more bite in that lateral direction. It's a little bit extra work, but there's a lot of extra work involved with metal tubes, especially when it's time to cut it. I always twist when I stick it in the hole, because you don't want it cutting anything on its way in. It's a sensitive area.
What?
I wish you could see Phil's all. No, I'm not even like, I'm purposely not even acknowledging that I'm saying innuendos. YouTube's policies have changed.
That's really what it is, right? Oh.
So, do you think we have more bite now? You pull it. Here, I'll hold the camera quick. You go pull.
Oh, dude.
How much does it take? Oh, jeez. Oh no.
Right when you said you didn't want to scratch
Okay, I didn't cause a mark, that's good. But obviously now we have to show you how to cut it. Okay, that loosened up, so that's good. I still have to use pliers to get the Primo Chill off. That's how tight the Primo Chill was in there. Now do you see why having that Allen key or Allen head on the inside is nice? I still don't want to scratch them by having to use pliers on them to get the fitting off like this. So that's why having that Allen in there is super nice. See that? And same thing for installing it. You can get it nice and snug with the O-ring and then just a little bit of a turn, installed. All right, so now how do you cut this tube? Well, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put fittings here and here. I'm doing a parallel loop between both of these. And I'm going to put the fittings in there. I'm gonna measure it though by using PETG. I'm going to sacrifice some of our brand new Primo Chill tubing because this metal tube is a lot more expensive than this plastic tube. In fact, you can get like 3 pieces of this for 1 of those. This is all about bling. It has nothing to do with practicality. It's expensive. Now again, because you have a tool now, when you're screwing this into plastic, do not over tighten, just go too snug and that's it. It's an O-ring that's sealing. It's not sealing based on thread tension. So here's what we need to do now. I need to take my PETG, and I also need to take my SLI bridge which in this case, we're just gonna use a bare PCB one because of our failed video of trying to do chrome, which by the way, I watched Adam Savage's video about using that stuff and I figured out what we did wrong. He was actually adding it to lacquer. I was thinning it. You don't wanna thin it. Technically, we're thickening it. So we're gonna try it again. We're not gonna make you suffer through that video again. We'll just show you in the next build log if it turned out or not. So the reason why I put the bridge in here is because the bridge is gonna keep these cards at an equal distance. The problem is they can sag differently and stuff. So I always make sure I test with the bridge in place. And that's not good enough right there because it's closer together on the end than here. So that tells me that's too short. So I'm just gonna mark about right there. I'm gonna cut back just behind it, and I'm gonna use my tool to get to it. That looks good to me, which means this should pop right on without being out of...
How did that happen?
It looked good, but I mean, you know, sometimes you just needed a second opinion. That's okay, so we can just trim a couple millimeters at a time with this tool. That's why I love that tool and working with the ETG. Is that better? It looks pretty good. So let's cut 2 of them now and see. There we go. And the reason why I'm doing these is I know I'm gonna do parallel on this loop. I'm sure anyone that's ever, like a plumber out there is looking at this going, oh, Jay, you don't want that one. You want one with a longer handle so you can really wrench on it. This does not give me a lot of torque. Not to mention I'm holding something slippery. So what this is this is a pipe cutter. You got a blade that basically is squishing its way into the metal and spreading it out. And then you've got a little roller here that keeps it in place so it rolls along the metal. And what you do is you tighten it down, you make some turns, tighten it again, go around. This is now why, like I said, having a bigger handle would be nice to have more leverage. Brass is a pretty soft metal. That's why this is able to be done. This would be even easier with copper. We've wanted to do a copper build. We've talked about it, but we haven't had the right build theme come along yet. Although I think we have one coming up. Small form factor, some oxidized looking copper tubing, make it look like a little post-apocalyptic box. All right, so this is what you're left with. A fairly rough cut. Fortunately, this works on metal too. Just do it softly. What we're kind of doing here is we're more or less just cutting off and polishing. Look at the brass, look how shiny it is, because it's almost like we polished it, huh? So what we're doing is we're just getting rid of the sharp edges. Any sharp edge on here can and will cut your O-ring. And guess what a cut O-ring means? Cut wallet, because you just put water all over your stuff. So we're gonna do this twice, and then we're gonna stick them in and we'll show you how it's gonna look.
How come you don't put the fittings and the tubes on and then put the graphics cards into the computer?
Like just have them out and then them sticking up and then put them together?
Yeah, that way you're not like going, you know what I mean? When it's already in and then that's happening.
Because it's easier for me just to squish them together that way, but I've never actually worked with metal tube before. This is all a first for me. So like I'm gonna probably do what you just said.
I noticed the tube, like the tube had to bend slightly for you to do the squishy. The sandwich of graphics cards.
So like you were asking Phil there, that's how you do it. Which I ended up having to do because I didn't want to damage anything. So I just decided to do it that way. Wow, that looks good. Cannot wait until this is all done. But Jay, are you just gonna use fittings everywhere for all your 90s? Well, the answer to that is yes and no. If you remember on the Dark Knight build, so we did 90 to a 90 degree fitting. 90 to a 90 degree fitting. For a couple of reasons. One, double bends are really difficult to do and get them lined up. And two, it was only 2 extra fittings and I thought it looked pretty cool. But you might have noticed, Jay, what are those boxes sitting over there? Like, what are all those boxes? Pre-bent 90 degree tubes. So when you bend it, there's a little bit of a crush that happens in there. They fill it with sand or water or whatever, and then they cap the ends and they bend it. It's like kind of like a mandrel in a sense. But with that tight of a 90, there's always a little bit of a crush, but that's okay because we'll be seeing it from like that angle and stuff. You'll take your test tube, like your PETG, and you'll bend your 90s and do your fittings. And then let's just like stick that there as like an example. So you get an idea of what the tubes are gonna look like in there. So then I'm gonna be doing a 90 bend into 90 fittings to fit them however they need to go. And what they've sent right here are 2 different 90s with different lengths. It's shorter on the long end and longer on the 90 end. So we have more length there in case you need it. So not really much of a system update, just more or less showing you kind of the aesthetics and stuff and how it's gonna come together. Obviously, we're still working on the bridge. I've been playing with Chrome Wrap. It's not working out like I want. I'm probably gonna try that paint again, the Molotov paint, thanks to Adam Savage's video where he showed him using it. I don't think I'm gonna do it in this build, but potentially. But I was sort of debating trying to find a way to incorporate the distro plate from the Fantech stuff. Because it's got that like mirror look, it sort of matches all the chrome. But I still need room for the pump and reservoir and all that. I don't like distro plate reservoirs, they don't hold enough coolant, so it makes it very difficult to actually get the loop filled. I like that I'm not being rushed on this build. And the sad part is I'm not rushed on this build, and it's happening faster than almost any other build. I think all your stupid comments about can't wait to see this one done in 2021, Jay, it's making me want to go faster and do better. Just shut up your ugly mouth. I've lost my mind. I'll see you in the next one.